May the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O Lord. Three weeks ago, as we finished the Epiphany season, the Gospel told us of Jesus taking Peter, James, and John up to the top of a mountain, and there he was transfigured before them. His clothes became white as snow and shining as bright as the sun. And while they watched, they also saw Moses and Elijah join him. Moses representing the law of the Old Testament, Elijah representing the prophets. And the three of them talked, and Luke tells us that they spoke of Jesus' departure. In other words, they spoke of Jesus' death. After this episode is finished and they go back down the mountain, Luke tells us that Jesus set his face for Jerusalem. In other words, this was going to be his destination. And so they begin the long journey from Galilee through Samaria into Judea, finally ending up in the city of Jerusalem. As they are going along their way, there are some Pharisees who come up to him and say, "You better watch out. Herod is after you." It seems a little bit unusual that the Pharisees should come up to him and warn him of anything. Because usually when we see Jesus interacting with Pharisees, they are adversaries. But it doesn't appear to be as monolithic as that. There were some Pharisees who were sympathetic to Jesus. And so they warned him that Herod is going to try to get him. But Jesus is undeterred, and he says, just go and tell that fox, that sly one, say that today and tomorrow I am doing what needs to be done, and on the third day I finish my work. Perhaps this is even a reference to his crucifixion and resurrection. He's not worried about Herod. He's headed to Jerusalem. This Herod, by the way, is not Herod the Great. It's not Herod who tried to kill him as an infant. This Herod is one of Herod's sons who inherited a quarter of Herod the Great's kingdom. This Herod, Herod Antipas, is the Herod who had John the Baptist beheaded. And why is he after Jesus? We don't know. There is some talk that Jesus might be John come back from the dead. And so Herod perhaps wants to make sure that that's the case. And if it is, perhaps he needs to be beheaded a second time. Jesus continues. He's headed to Jerusalem. Jerusalem is on his mind. And he says, "Jerusalem, Jerusalem, why do you always leave me?" About 25 or 30 years ago, a man came to me for counseling. I don't remember his name anymore. We'll call him John. He was extremely upset because he was involved in a separation with his wife. But at the same time, he told me that his daughter had gone off with his wife and was not talking to him. And he said, what? What can I do? And I gave him the only advice that perhaps could be given at the time. I said, you've got to keep the door open. The story got involved, you see, and part of the reason that the daughter left was because he discovered something about the daughter's boyfriend that was terrible. John said at first the young man seemed to be okay. He said that he had been a Marine and that he was one of the first people, one of the first men going to Kuwait. And occasionally he would even wear a military uniform. But John said, one day I saw him and I noticed that even though he had a uniform on, his shoes were not polished. Now, no soldier goes through boot camp and all of that wearing a uniform without spit polishing his shoes. Doesn't make sense. Anyway, he ended up talking to a friend of his daughter's, and this friend said, you know, I really don't like her boyfriend. And in fact, I sometimes wonder if he was ever in the Marines. That got John to thinking. Is it possible? It could make sense. And so he called Parris Island. Parris Island is down in South Carolina. That's the place, at least on the East Coast, where young men going into the Marines will go for their initial training. And so he called Parris Island. He told them of his plight. He said, can you help me? Do you know this young man's name? And they said, hang on. They came back in a little while, and they said, we have no record of anybody by that name. But to be sure, I would call Washington if I were you, Washington, D.C., and talk to somebody in the Department of Defense. Maybe they can help. And so John said, undeterred, he picked up the phone, he called Washington, D.C., he got on the line with somebody at the Department of Defense, and he again went through his litany, and they said, hang on. After a while, they came back, and they said, no, we have no record of this person. He has never been in the armed services. Well, of course, this set off all kinds of bells in John's head. And he then remembered something else the young man had said, that he had been the star quarterback at his local high school. He remembered the high school, and he made a call to the high school. He said, he again told them the story. Can you tell me something about this young man? Was he in your school? Was he on the football team? They said, hang on. A short while later, they came back and they said, yes, we know the name. He's a high school dropout. He was never on the football team. He's not in his 20s. He's 16, maybe 17. John was very upset. He went and he relayed all of this to his wife. He relayed it to his daughter. And then that precipitated this separation. That precipitated the daughter also leaving him. She was angry. did not want to speak with him. And so John came to me, what can I do? He said, John, the only thing you can do is keep the lines of communication open. On her birthday, send her a card. Send her flowers. At Christmas, send her a card. Send her flowers. Telling her that you're there. You're not in. You're waiting. Well, I didn't hear from John for, I guess, about a year. He came back. He was still kind of sad in his countenance. John, what's happening? He said, well, I've done like you've said. I've sent the flowers. I've sent cards. And I heard from a friend of hers that she said the flowers just looked like funeral arrangements. Wasn't interested. I said, John, that's all you can do. Keep the avenue open. Well, I guess it was about 3 years after our first conversation. It was in January. He came in again, and this time his face was so bright. I said, John, sit down, tell me what's happening. He said, some good things have happened. He says, I came home on Christmas Eve, and I had a wreath on my door, like many people, and I noticed that there was something in the wreath. As I got closer, it looked like an envelope. I said, this is strange. Why would the postman put an envelope in my wreath? The mailbox is right there. And he says, I opened it, and it was from my daughter. And John said, I called her, and the day after Christmas, we got together. She was not happy. Lots of stuff going down. And she asked if she could come home. And he said, she's home with me now, and I'm trying to help her. God says, Jerusalem, my daughter Jerusalem, why do you constantly want to leave me? Every time you leave me, it kills me. I don't know what to do anymore. I don't want to shut the door. I don't want to just say, all right, go your way, I'm going this way. We don't need to see each other again. God says, you need me. And so I'm going to keep the lines of communication open. You want to kill me? Fine. I'll just still hang out. And he hangs out with his arms outstretched. His arms outstretched in a welcome, not a pushing away. His arms outstretched saying, come, I forgive you. Come back. His arms outstretched saying, I want to protect you like a mother hen protects her chicks. I'm here. I'm waiting. I'm waiting for as long as it takes. Why? Why do you want to leave? Why do you want to go your own way? You think you can be in control? It's a false sense. Yes, you have a certain amount of control, and yes, everyday science is figuring out some other things to make life more comfortable. But in the end, you don't have the control that you want. Yes, you know, you may break like a a vase into various pieces. And you can glue yourself back together. But what happens when the vase breaks so terribly that there's only dust left? You can't put dust back together. But I can. I work in dust. The first man, Adam, was created out of the dust of the earth. The universe was created by nothing more than me speaking. It is with me that you will find a depth of meaning in your life that you won't have otherwise. Because I am the one who shows you what love is really like. I am the one who will be here with you, hold you forever. Come back, Jerusalem. I wait. You won't see me until you say, behold, blessed is the one who comes in the name of the Lord. Blessed is my anointed, my Son, Jesus. And when you welcome him, you welcome me. Because when you welcome him into your life, you are seeing me in my entirety. Me who wants nothing more than to have you as part of me. Amen. The peace of God, which passes all understanding, keep your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. Let us continue our service by singing hymn number 759.